Have you ever found yourself in a tense situation and later on you're just replaying it in your head, asking, why on earth did I do that? Well, today we're going to get into those automatic reactions we all have to social stress. Let's start with the feeling I'm sure is pretty familiar.
You know the moment, right? Someone says something that's maybe a little insulting, or they put you on the spot, and right when you need to say something, nothing. You just freeze. And you're left wondering, what just happened? Why couldn't I find the words?
See if any of these ring a bell. Your mind goes completely blank. You know you want to say something, but the words just won't come out. Or maybe it's the opposite. You find yourself laughing along, even though what they said really stung. Afterwards, maybe you start avoiding that person, or even the place where it happened. And of course, the classic. Hours later, the perfect comeback finally pops into your head.
If any of that sounds familiar, the very first thing I want you to know, and it's the most important point we're going to make, is this. Your reaction is not a sign of weakness.
It's not some kind of character flaw. It's not something you should be ashamed of. It is, quite simply, your biology at work. And once you actually understand what's happening, you can start to feel a lot more in control.
Okay, so let's get into it. To really understand these reactions, we have to look at your brain's built-in alarm system. It all comes down to the science of survival.
So here's the thing. The part of your brain that detects threats is, well, it's ancient. It evolved a long, long time ago, and it doesn't always know the difference between a physical threat, like a lion, and a social threat, like being humiliated in front of your friends. To your nervous system, danger is danger. The reaction it triggers is pretty much the same.
So when that internal alarm starts ringing, our bodies tend to follow one of 4 automatic survival plans. You've probably heard of the first 2, but all 4 are really important to know. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Let's break down what each of these actually looks like.
So first up is fight. This is probably the most outwardly aggressive response. It's that raw impulse to move toward a threat and try to neutralize it.
Now, in a social situation, this isn't usually a physical brawl. It more often looks like snapping back with a really sharp comment, or maybe yelling or trading insults. It's all about that direct, confrontational energy.
The logic behind this isn't some well-thought-out plan. It's a primal, automatic goal that just takes over your brain. The message is simple. Eliminate the threat.
All right, let's move on to the next one. If fight is all about moving toward the danger, flight is the exact opposite. It's that powerful, overwhelming urge to just get out of there. This usually shows up as avoidance. You might start consciously avoiding certain people, or skipping a class or an event you know will be stressful. Or maybe you just pull back from friends for a while to kind of lower your chances of running into trouble. And the internal logic is really straightforward, and honestly pretty effective in the short term. It's just, if I'm not there, it can happen. The whole strategy is to just remove yourself from the path of danger. Okay, now for the third response, and this might be the most misunderstood of them all. Freeze. This is what happens when your brain does a lightning-fast calculation and decides that fighting or running would actually make things worse. So the impulse is to become completely still.
This is that exact moment we talked about at the beginning. Your mind goes blank, your body might feel heavy, almost stuck. You literally can't get the words out. And sometimes it shows up in really confusing ways, like nervous laughter, or even smiling when you feel terrible inside.
So instead of seeing this as a moment of weakness, try to reframe it. This is your brain's survival instinct in overdrive. It's not giving up. It's following a very clear directive. Stay still. Minimize damage.
And finally, let's look at the fourth response, one that's a little less known but is incredibly common. Fawn. This is the impulse to try and appease the person who's threatening you, to please them as a way to shut down the conflict.
You can think of fawn as people-pleasing turned up to a survival strategy. It can look like agreeing with someone who's putting you down or trying really hard to impress them. Maybe you become overly helpful, or you even make a joke at your own expense before they can.
The strategy here is all about social connection as a form of safety. The brain's logic is, if they like me, they won't hurt me. You're essentially using their approval as a shield.
So, those are the 4 automatic reactions. Now, the goal isn't to stop them from ever happening. They're wired into our biology. The key is to learn how to shift from an automatic reaction to a more conscious response. So let's talk about how to regain some of that control.
Here are 2 really simple but incredibly powerful tools you can use right in the moment. First, slow breathing. Just breathe in for a count of 4 and then breathe out for a count of 6. That slightly longer exhale is key. It sends a direct message to your nervous system that it's okay to calm down. Second, grounding. Force your brain to shift gears by noticing 5 things you can see around you, 4 things you can physically feel, and 3 things you can hear. This literally pulls your brain out of that threat loop and back into the present moment.
And this really brings us to the main point of all this. When it comes to managing these intense biological responses, the most important tool you have is simple. Understanding is power.
Think about it this way. When you don't understand why your body just shut down or why you suddenly lashed out, it's easy to feel shame. And shame just builds silence. It makes you feel isolated, like something is wrong with you. But when you can replace that shame with understanding, when you can say, oh, okay, that was a freeze response, or that was my fight mode kicking in, it builds strategy. It gives you the clarity to think, okay, what might I do differently next time?
So, let's end on this thought. These responses are part of a system that is literally designed to keep you safe. The goal is never to just get rid of them. The goal is to understand them. Because it's in that understanding that you find the self-compassion and the power to regulate your system and choose your next step.